Hello to you, cinephiles! Welcome to the FILMSTRIP channel, where I discover for you the list of 152 masterpieces of cinema according to the critics firm Mediafilm. To explore Mediafilm, go check out their website, even though it's all in French. I have put the link in the description. I have also put a link to the same list on my Mubi account. The titles are in English there. If you haven't seen the other videos of this series, you can always check them out on the channel's page. Today we discover the first European film on our list, directed in 1920 by Robert Wiene. Here is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Das Kabinett des Dr. Caligari. The movie begins with a young man, Francis, sitting beside a friend. Jan, a woman with an empty gaze, is walking nearby. Francis says she is his fiancée. He tells his story. In a really odd-looking town, Francis and his best friend Alan are both in love with Jan. A mysterious man, the Dr. Caligari, demands for a special permit to be allowed to present a show at the city fair. The clerk, to whom he must ask, is particularly annoying. That same night, the clerk is found murdered. At the fair, Francis and Alan watch Caligari's somnambulist show. The somnambulist, César, slowly awakens. He predicts that Alan will die before dawn. That night, he is killed by an enigmatic figure. Everyone's suspicions fall when a man is finally arrested, but he turns out to be innocent. Francis decides to spy on Caligari and thinks he sees the somnambulist lying in his box, but it is in fact only a mannequin. The real somnambulist, César, breaks into Jana's home in order to kill her. But upon seeing her, he falls in love and decides to take her with him. As he is pursued, he leaves Jana behind. Further down the road, he collapses and dies. Francis and the police enter Caligari's house and discover the mannequin in the box. Suspicion is now on the doctor. He escapes but is followed by Francis until he reaches a mental hospital. He discovers that the crazy doctor is in fact the director of the asylum. While searching information in the doctor's documents while he sleeps, his journal is discovered. The doctor seems to be obsessed by a guy named Caligari and his murdering somnambulist a century before in Italy. The doctor decided to make similar experiments with the somnambulist admitted to his hospital. Revealed, the doctor is arrested and kept as a patient in his own institution. Ending the long flashback, we discover that Francis tells this story while he is a patient at that very same mental hospital. Jan is a patient there, and César also. Thinking he is Caligari, Francis attacks the director. The latter says he finally understands the patient's condition, that he now might be able to cure him. During the years following the First Great War, the Weimar cinema offers a portrait of a society which is feeling cynical towards the regime in place since 1871. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is released at the beginning of this trend. In his book titled The Expressionism, Lionel Richard writes about the movement that, before being an artistic expression, it is first a state of mind, of the soul, that can schematically be summarized in two words: anguish and revolt. We witness in this trend an introspection, voluntary or not, but nevertheless necessary. This introspection translates by evading the external world, the material and physical world. We convey in the images some kind of anti-realism that has the effect of destabilizing the audience, shaking our mental state. It is at that point that stands the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. An interesting fact is that after the war, hypnosis resurfaced in the practice of psychology, specifically because of its implication in the treatments offered to war veterans. Winning a certain popularity, stories about hypnosis made an appearance in literature and by extension in movies. The very first scene affirms that the following story is imbued of subjectivity. A narrator recalls, it is his version of the story we shall see. The atmosphere of the story hangs by this subjectivity. Realism is transgressed, demolished. Specifically because all this whole strange world belongs to the narrator's vision. This narrator is mentally unstable, troubled, traumatized by his own guilt in the murder of his friend Alan. The use of the shadow during the murder scene is not only to creep us out, but could also be a symbol of the darkness of his soul, the dark side of Francis' psyche, the true killer wanting to eliminate the competition in the fight for Jana's heart. Subtlety is rather rare in Expressionism, and all the aesthetic elements always remind us that fact. It is not a reproduction of reality, but an exteriorization of the emotions, as horrible and harrowing as they may be. We could summarize this aspect by 3 words: in your face. The characters' movements are unnatural and irregular. The interpretations are anti-naturalist. The makeup is overexpressive. The sets are distorted. The lines are oblique or curved. Even the writing font for the title cards is in a weird format. The letters are crooked and pointy. The lightings are accentuated to give contrast to the image and to play with shadows and frightening chiaroscuro. Within his story, Caligari is a product of its time. We witness a portrait of a society alienated by individuals playing the game of power, in this case the regime of the Second Reich. Moreover, the screenwriters Hans Janowitz and Karl Maya were openly defiant of authority during their military service at the time of the Great War. It is interesting from a narrative point of view to evaluate the story within the story at the moment of the reading of the doctor's journal. The main narrative level, the one with the somnambulists and the murders, is already subjective to Francis' vision. Then at the beginning of the reading, we are shown the doctor going crazily happy at the sight of the somnambulist that is brought to him. That moment, buried in a 3rd narrative level, must be evaluated as being even further from reality. Not that the global meaning of the film is affected, but it still is an important moment for its narrative implications. Ironically, several scholars made a parallel between the hypnosis of the somnambulist and the power that cinema has on the masses. I say ironically because the issue of responsibility of an individual taking part in horrible actions done under orders seems to predict a facet of human psychology that will gain in importance a quarter of a century later during the rising popularity of the Nazi Party, a party that will try to legitimate its ascension by propaganda films. Caligari might not be a completely cinematic manifestation. By that I mean that he borrows a lot of elements from pictorial art and theater to tell his story, instead of innovating in a language that would be specific to cinema. Nevertheless, it builds the foundations on which will evolve the whole movement of German Expressionism, one of the most influential movements in cinema history, with all its undercurrents, up to the American film noir and more. That's all for today. As always, thank you for watching. If you have suggestions or comments, do not hesitate to write them in the section below. Please give the video a like and also be sure to click the subscribe button to be notified each time I upload a new video. You can always follow the Facebook page, the link is in the description. I will return soon for the 5th title on the list of masterpieces according to Mediafilm. The links to the list are also in the description. Subscribe, like and share. I'm René for FILMSTRIP. For our next film, we return to the United States for an introduction to the most famous artist in cinema, Charles Chaplin. We shall discover The Kid.